Guys, we've got more breaking stuff to get here on this Tuesday. Looking at this tweet, if your school is not in the SEC or Big Ten, your school has probably expressed interest or discussed the Big Ten or the SEC membership. It is a sobering fact that many people are just going to have to accept. The Big Ten and the SEC, due to the teams they have currently in their conferences, they have all of the power, and even teams in the Big 12, teams in the ACC, they know those two conferences are going to make so much more money than everyone else that everyone is trying to get into either of these conferences except for Notre Dame. We've also got this: Oregon initiated preliminary discussions in Chicago with Big Ten to determine if Ducks are compatible in Big Ten. Sources told Action Network. Outgoing Oregon President Michael Schill, AD Rob Mullins, and Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren not involved in any discussions in Chicago. So this is a developing situation with Oregon reaching out to the Big Ten, guys. This was the plan from the beginning, I'm sure, for Oregon. This is by far their best option, is potentially seeking Big Ten membership, which is one of the reasons it's been reported they've been very coy with possibly trying to go to the Big 12. The Big 12 had contacted 6 schools, and apparently Oregon and Washington didn't really, they were interested. You want to keep all of your options open, but clearly if there's any way you can get into the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington know, we will just take a crappy run-of-the-mill TV deal with ESPN, the most important factor being no exit fee. So in 2 years, if the Big Ten is open, in 1 year, if the Big Ten is open, if they get, if Oregon people talk to the Big Ten and the Big Ten says, listen, our plan is to have a West Wing, our plan is to add you, we just can't do it right now. Oregon knows, all right, we can just take a crappy deal, with ESPN or whatever for the Pac-12 because it's going to be crappy, and then leave in a year or two. There's also been a few people saying the Big Ten, it definitely makes sense for the Big Ten to want 2 teams from the West, but maybe not all 4. And this is kind of something I've been seeing going around recently. The idea that the Big Ten could take both Cal and Stanford, but not Oregon and Washington, and then with Cal and Stanford turn around and take teams from the ACC. Now, this is a very complicated theory considering the ACC's crappy grant of rights deal, but we're also under the assumption that if the Big Ten gets to 20 teams, the SEC is going to get to 20 teams, and they're going to take 4 teams from the ACC as well. I still think, and I maintain right now, based off of everything we're hearing, Notre Dame, Washington, very interested. The Big Ten, very interested in these schools. I think the one part where it doesn't add up, it could dilute the overall money each team makes in the Big Ten if the 4 schools you're adding are California, Stanford, Washington, and Oregon. Obviously, if you add Notre Dame, you're making more money. But there's been several reports that Notre Dame is staying an independent, and there's a rumored number now on the actual TV deal Notre Dame will be getting when their NBC contract is up in 2024. The rumor is $60 million. I'm going to do a separate video on that, but that is the rumor right here. What are the odds of the Pac-12 conference collapse? So this is the weekly update on the chances the Pac-12 has of a collapse. This was answered. It was a question about the Pac-12 potentially collapsing if Stanford, Cal, Washington, and Oregon left for the Big Ten. This is a Pac-12 writer. 100% chance. In that scenario, a total of 6 schools would be headed to the Big Ten, and the 4 corners, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, would undoubtedly leave for the Big 12. Sure, the conference could reform with Oregon State, Washington State, and a new slew of Mountain West schools, but it would be only name only. So yeah, I actually think that conference would completely dissolve. Washington State and Oregon State would go to the Mountain West personally. Of course, The big shoe to drop, well, really, it's either or. I think if the Big 12 gets the 4 schools, the conference dissolves, and I certainly know if Oregon and Washington leave the conference dissolves because it's a domino effect. If Oregon, Washington, Cal, and Stanford go to the Big 10 in some form, those 4 other schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, most certainly will head off to the Big 12. And then we've got some rumors via Twitter. The Big 10 is still reluctant to raid the Pac again so soon after USC and UCLA. It doesn't want to risk a lawsuit for completely crippling a conference into extinction. Pressure is being applied to get the Big 12 to act next and take at least 2 to open the floodgates. Yes, we discussed this, and people had a great theory on this, basically saying the Big 10 wants more schools, they want a West Wing, but they don't want to be the sole reason the Pac-12 dies completely. So they want the Big 12 to at least take 2 schools so they don't get all of the blame. It makes complete sense, and we talked about it a few days ago. Oregon is as good as already out the door, as talks between the Ducks and the Big 10 are intensifying, but it looks like the Big 12 needs to make the next move. Once again, that is the whole reference, that is the whole idea behind the Big 10 not wanting to be the sole reason a Power 5 conference, like with a great history. They're very self-aware. They understand it's a bad look. They're saying, listen, we made the first move against the conference. The Big 12 needs to make the next move, and then we'll add our teams, Oregon, Washington. This news, if this is true, these are rumors on Twitter. I don't want to sit here and say this is 100% true. Talks are intensifying. We heard it earlier in the tweet from the Action Network that Oregon, very interested in the Big 10. And I still maintain the theory that Oregon and Washington will be in the Big 10. That's my personal belief. And then we've got Notre Dame is not a factor. They are going to get the money they want without joining a conference, at least for the next 6 to 8 years. So the Notre Dame money thing is really curious to me. I guess Notre Dame is content with settling if the rumored TV deal they're supposed to be getting in 2024, which is around $60 million, is true. If Notre Dame did join the Big Ten Conference, they would make at least, I would say, by 2027 or 2028, $40 million more. So that is a lot of money to leave on the table. This comes down to how much do we care about being an independent? Obviously, it looks like they care a lot about being an independent, leaving possibly $40 million on the table. We will discuss all of the numbers in another video. But I just wanted to talk about, the whole Notre Dame thing. We've been asking, what are they doing? It's looking like we're actually getting data. We're actually getting numbers that Notre Dame is staying for sure. This isn't 100% confirmed, but we've heard it from so many people, for sure staying as an independent, and they will be renegotiating their next TV deal with NBC. Of course, I think their president came out and said he was so happy that the Big Ten signed on with NBC and they can kind of be partners, and you can kind of have the Notre Dame game on at 3:30, and it's a doubleheader, and it goes straight to the NBC 7:30 Big Ten game, which I think will be great for college football. That will be starting in 2023, the Big Ten, and its major deals with CBS, Fox, and NBC. And you've got the noon game on Big Noon. You've got the 3:30 game on CBS and the 7 o'clock game on NBC. And I've theorized that maybe if you do get a Big Ten West Wing, you could reopen the TV negotiations and do a 10:30 window with ESPN to allow ESPN some Big Ten content. I think ESPN would be desperate to do something, and they would pay a decent amount to get at least some Big Ten games back. Because remember, the one reason the Big Ten really is in the market right now for the Pac-12, if it somehow did stay together, would be to get that 10:30 window. They want that 4th extended window. It's just free extra ratings. They want live football on at 10:30, and the conference isn't horrible. It's not like the Pac-12, even losing USC and UCLA, it still is a respectable conference. But obviously, there's some holes, and I think the Big Ten is going to gouge a knife into those holes along with the Big 12. It's just semantics. Now it's just the Big Ten saying, listen, we don't want to be the reason this historic, this great conference completely dissolves. We need you to at least add somebody so you can take a little heat off of us. I think that's what's going on right now between the Big Ten, Oregon, and the Big 12 in terms of who's going to add more schools next. If the Big 12 adds just 2 schools, I would say it's going to be Arizona and Colorado. If they add 4, it's going to be Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. And then the Big 10. It is interesting. We're hearing these rumors about Oregon. Where is Washington in all of this? I would imagine those 2 teams would be attached at the hip. I would be very surprised if Oregon got into the Big 10, but not Washington. Same thing, vice versa. We actually heard rumors. This was back probably about a month ago when the narrative was that Oregon wasn't going to be good enough for the Big Ten because they didn't generate enough revenue. We heard rumors that Washington was the more attractive team for the Big Ten than Oregon. But now we've got all this stuff with Oregon, the rumors of them having discussions about joining the Big Ten. The writing is on the wall here, folks, of what's going to happen. It's Oregon, it's Washington to the Big Ten, it's the 4 schools to the Pac-12, along with possibly Stanford and California to the Big Ten. Although I'm not sure on that. I'm not sure on Stanford and Cal. They definitely have the academics, but I'm concerned about diluting each Big Ten member's payday if you're adding those schools to get to 20 total. I'm concerned about it. I wonder if some of these Big Ten teams would maybe be hesitant to add some of those schools, to add specifically Stanford and California, who have great academic institutions, but they're not big draws for TV. So they're not going to add to the pot. They're just going to dilute it because now you have to cut another slice for each of those teams to take on some money. Maybe they do some sort of contract where it's a grandfathering in thing where the first few years Stanford and California are in the Big Ten, they don't make the full amount. That's not unequal revenue, distribution. That's not what that is. That's a more grandfathering in. You're a new member of the conference. You're not going to get a full cut right away. Maybe they do that to kind of ease the pain. I'm just speculating. I don't know what they're going to do when it comes down to the money. The reason I'm talking about the money so much is because it does seem to be a sticking point. It makes total sense for the Big Ten. Go to the West. Make the conference more balanced. Add a West Wing. Ease the travel of USC and UCLA. The only thing that doesn't make sense is the overall dilution of the other members if you get to 20 teams. That's the one thing where I think they'll be pissed about it. How do you mitigate that? How do you solve that? They're going to be thinking about it, but it does make sense to go west for the Big Ten. So that is the latest on the realignment stuff, guys. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.